A powerful tropical wave has entered the Caribbean, and I need to talk to you about it right now because within the next few days, it could interact with warm water, shifting wind, and an atmosphere that has already produced two hurricanes on opposite sides of the world this season. If the ingredients line up even slightly differently than expected, this thing could organize fast. That is the honest truth, and I am not going to soften it for you. But before you panic, stay with me until the end because the title isn't quite what it sounds like. What actually happens next is far more interesting and far less scary than the headline makes it sound. I don't chase clicks. I don't exaggerate storms just to keep you watching. I track this because real people make real decisions based on this information, whether that is deciding if it's safe to travel, deciding whether to prepare a home, or simply deciding if an umbrella is needed tomorrow. So let's go through this together piece by piece, the same way I do every single update. Let's start with the numbers, because you deserve those first before anything else. Roughly 85% of all major Atlantic hurricanes, the big ones, Category 3 and above, begin their lives exactly like this, as a tropical wave drifting off the coast of West Africa. Not every wave becomes a monster. Most of them fall apart quietly and nobody ever hears about them. But the ones that do organize can go from a disorganized mess of thunderstorms to a life-threatening hurricane in under 48 hours, if conditions cooperate. In 2017, Hurricane Maria went from a tropical storm to a Category 5 in about 36 hours before hitting Puerto Rico. In 2023, Hurricane Otis did something similar along the Pacific side of Mexico, catching an entire coastline off guard with how fast it intensified. That is the kind of speed we are talking about. So this wave isn't automatically dangerous, but it isn't automatically harmless either. It is a variable, and right now every major forecasting agency is running that variable through every model they have. Here is the problem in plain terms. The Caribbean right now is a balancing act of competing forces, and it has been for the last several days. Sea surface temperatures are sitting well above the 79 degrees Fahrenheit threshold typically needed to sustain tropical development, so there is plenty of fuel sitting in the water waiting to be used. At the same time, a thick plume of Saharan dust is drifting across parts of the eastern Caribbean, drying out the air and choking moisture out of anything trying to develop, almost like a natural brake pedal on the system. Add wind shear on top of that, the difference in wind speed and direction at different altitudes, which can either rip a storm apart before it organizes or let it spin freely and strengthen, and you have got a system whose fate is genuinely still being decided hour by hour. This isn't a simple yes or no situation. It is live, it is changing as we speak, and that is exactly why I want to walk you through it properly instead of just throwing a scary headline at you and moving on. Now let's actually talk about how a tropical wave becomes a hurricane. Because once you understand this, everything else about this story makes a lot more sense. It starts near the Intertropical Convergence Zone, a belt near the equator where trade winds from the northern and southern hemispheres collide and force air upward, creating clusters of thunderstorms that ripple westward off the African coast, roughly every 3 to 5 days during hurricane season. Most of these waves fall apart quietly over open ocean and never make the news. But when one survives long enough to reach warm water and the atmosphere above it is unstable enough to support rising air, the storms inside it start organizing around a center of low pressure. Then the Coriolis effect, the rotational force created by the Earth spinning on its axis, starts bending the inflowing wind into a spiral. That spiral is the actual birth of circulation. Add enough warm, moist air rising and condensing, releasing latent heat as it goes, and that circulation tightens step by step into a tropical depression, then a tropical storm, then, if conditions stay favorable the whole way through, a hurricane. It is essentially a heat engine, converting stored ocean warmth into wind energy, and honestly, it is one of the best understood processes in modern meteorology today. That understanding did not come easy, though, and this is where the real detective story is. Back in the early 1900s, forecasters had almost nothing to work with beyond ship reports and scattered coastal observations, which meant storms could show up out of nowhere with almost no warning at all, sometimes catching entire coastal towns completely by surprise. That changed dramatically with the launch of the first weather satellites in the 1960s, giving meteorologists a continuous eye over the entire ocean basin for the first time in history. Then came Hurricane Hunter aircraft, flown directly into the eye walls of developing storms to gather pressure and wind data that no satellite could ever capture from space. Today, NASA and NOAA run an entire coordinated system together, GOES satellites updating images every few minutes, ocean buoys tracking sea surface temperature in real time across the basin, and computer models like the European ECMWF and the American GFS running millions of calculations to project where a storm is most likely headed days before it ever becomes a real threat. That is the actual detective story here, piecing together satellite imagery, historical storm tracks, and ocean heat data to answer one question: will this wave organize? And if it does, exactly where is it going? Now, I want to address something I know a lot of you have seen floating around online, because it deserves a straight, honest answer instead of just being ignored. There is a theory going around that hurricanes are secretly created or steered using weather modification technology, things like HARP or cloud seeding, some kind of engineered weather weapon aimed at specific coastlines. This theory comes up after almost every single major storm now, and I get asked about it constantly in the comments. Here is why it just does not hold up scientifically. A single hurricane releases energy equivalent to roughly 10,000 nuclear bombs over its lifetime, purely from water vapor condensing at massive scale across hundreds of thousands of square miles of ocean. There is no known technology on Earth, including HARP, which is actually just a small research facility in Alaska studying the upper ionosphere, not weather formation, that comes anywhere close to generating or redirecting that kind of energy. And hurricane tracks are independently confirmed by multiple competing national weather agencies in different countries, using different satellites and completely different computer models, all landing on nearly identical forecasts within a day or two of landfall. If storms were somehow being artificially steered, that kind of independent international agreement simply would not happen the way it consistently does. The real explanation is less dramatic, but honestly far more impressive once you actually understand it. Ocean heat, atmospheric pressure, and Earth's own rotation, doing exactly what physics predicts they will, every single time. Here's something that genuinely surprises a lot of people, and once it clicks, it changes how you read every hurricane update from here on out. Wind speed is only part of the story. The real destructive power comes from something far less visible, and that is energy scaling. Because wind energy scales with the square of wind speed, a storm with double the wind speed does not carry twice the destructive force, it carries roughly 4 times the force. That is why the jump from a moderate tropical storm to a major hurricane always feels so sudden and so extreme. The underlying energy is not increasing in a straight line, it is compounding. It is the same logarithmic idea you see with earthquake magnitude scales, just applied to wind instead of ground motion. So a storm that looks only a little stronger on a chart, maybe 10 or 15 mile per hour difference, can in reality be carrying dramatically more destructive energy underneath the surface number. So here's the honest version of everything I just told you, because I always try to give you both halves of the story, not just the scary one. Yes, this wave has real potential, and yes, 85% of major hurricanes do start exactly this way. That part is true, and it deserves to be taken seriously, not dismissed. But here is the other half that most headlines conveniently leave out. This system is being tracked second by some of the most advanced early warning infrastructure ever built by humanity. Satellites are watching it right now as you listen to this. Hurricane Hunter aircraft are on standby, ready to fly directly into it the moment it shows any real sign of organizing. Multiple independent agencies across different countries are cross-checking every single model run against each other constantly. If this wave does strengthen, people across the Caribbean, Central America, and the southeastern United States will typically get 3 to 5 days of advance notice before any potential landfall, which is genuinely enough time to prepare property and, if needed, evacuate safely. The scary version of this story is the wave itself. The reassuring version, the one that actually matters most, is that nobody is being caught off guard by it. This early awareness is not a warning sign of doom, it is the system working exactly the way it is supposed to. So, what should you actually do with all of this? Not panic, prepare, calmly and early, the same way I always tell you. First, if you live anywhere in the Caribbean Basin, Central America, or along the Gulf and southeastern U.S. coastlines, know your evacuation zone before you ever need it, not during an active warning when everyone else is scrambling too. Check your local emergency management website today while things are still calm. Second, put together or check a basic emergency kit, water, non-perishable food, any medications you need, flashlights, and a battery-powered radio, enough to comfortably last at least 3 days without power. Third, follow official sources only during any active storm, your National Hurricane Center, NOAA, or your regional meteorological agency, rather than unverified claims spreading around social media, because misinformation genuinely spreads faster than the storm does. Fourth, if you live near the coast, understand that storm surge, not wind, is historically the deadliest part of any tropical system. So know clearly whether your home sits in a surge-prone area before hurricane season gets deep into its peak weeks. And fifth, simply stay subscribed to trusted tracking sources like this one, because a situation like this can shift within a single day, and calm, early information is always better than a last-minute scramble driven by panic. This wave may fade into nothing over the next few days, the same way most of them quietly do, or it may turn into something that genuinely needs real attention, and if it does, I will be here tracking every single update. Either way, the region is not walking into this blind, and now, neither are you. So tell me honestly, are you currently in the path this system could take, and have you already put together your emergency plan for this season, or is this the video that finally gets you to do it? Drop your location and your answer down in the comments. I read every single one of them. If this video helped you actually understand what is really happening out there, hit subscribe so you never miss the next update the moment anything changes, and share this with anyone you know living along that coastline. They deserve the real story too, calmly, honestly, without the hype and without the unnecessary fear.